Coming back to motorcycles at 50 hits, completely different. Your heart still loves the ride, but your brain suddenly has a whole PowerPoint presentation of everything that could go wrong. If you're returning to riding after decades away, or if you're thinking about it, this video is for you. Because there are some things I wish someone had slapped into my head before I got back on a bike in my late 40s. And if I'd known these earlier, my confidence, my skills, and my enjoyment would have skyrocketed. This is Matthew from Autozium, and today we're talking about the truth of coming back to motorcycles at 50, the stuff nobody warns you about, and the things that will make your comeback smoother, safer, and way more fun. Let's get into it. Number one, your brain still thinks you're 25. Your body doesn't. The funniest thing about coming back to motorcycles at 50 is that your brain hits play on memories from your 20s like they happened yesterday. It remembers rolling into corners like a superhero, remembers jumping curbs behind the mall, remembers that one time you outran a storm like you were the protagonist of an action movie. Your brain is convinced you're still that rider, the invincible, flexible, spring-loaded version of you. And then your body enters the chat. Suddenly, your lower back files an official complaint. Your neck acts like it needs a union break every time you do a shoulder check. Your hips crack like a bag of popcorn when you swing a leg over the seat. You don't bounce anymore. You settle. You don't recover. You negotiate. But here's the thing nobody tells you, especially guys who try to macho their way through everything. This isn't weakness. This is biology being biology. You don't lose your ability to ride when you get older. You lose your ability to ride cold. And that's the key difference. When you were young, you could hop on a bike with zero warm-up, half a meal in your stomach, no stretching, and absolutely no sleep, and your body would go, yeah, sure. Let's ride across the city and do wheelies behind the stadium. Now, you need 30 seconds. 30 seconds of letting your body loosen up. 30 seconds of rolling your shoulders. 30 seconds of stretching your wrists and ankles. 30 seconds of getting your joints on the same page as your enthusiasm. The moment you give your body that tiny bit of prep, your riding becomes dramatically smoother. Your clutch control gets cleaner. Your balance steadies. Your reaction time sharpens. You're no longer fighting tension. You're working with your body, not against it. And let's be honest, your reflexes are still good. You didn't turn 50 and suddenly become a garden statue. What changed isn't your reaction time. It's your recovery time. Your body is more cautious now because it wants you to avoid unnecessary mistakes. That's not fear. That's wisdom. Once you stop pretending you're still a 25-year-old with no health insurance and no sense of consequences, your entire riding experience improves. You start warming up. You start listening to your body. You start pacing yourself. And weirdly enough, when you do that, you often end up riding better than you ever did in your 20s. Because you're not riding with ego anymore. You're riding with awareness. And that's where confidence truly comes from. Number two, modern motorcycles are nothing like the ones you grew up with. If the last bike you seriously rode had a carburetor, a choke lever, and a gas gauge that was basically a vibe check, then modern motorcycles are going to feel like aliens. Good aliens, but aliens. The bikes of the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s were powerful, sure, but they were predictable. You had enough time between twisting the throttle and feeling acceleration to send a text message. Power bands were wide, forgiving, and often lazy. Mistakes were noticeable but recoverable. Today, modern bikes respond faster than your ex when you owe them money. Throttle by wire, traction control, ABS, ride modes, quick shifters, cruise control. And don't even get me started on modern brakes. One finger on a radial-mounted caliper will stop the bike so hard your soul will try to exit your body through your helmet. If you're coming back after decades away, the biggest adjustment isn't the power itself. It's the immediacy of it. New bikes don't ramp up, they launch. Even middleweight bikes today make more power than old superbikes. A modern 600cc sport bike is basically a missile with headlights. Your muscle memory is calibrated for older machines. Machines that required finesse, not feather touch precision. Machines that let you get away with sloppy inputs. Modern bikes do not tolerate that. They will amplify whatever you do, good or bad. That's why returning riders get surprised, not because they lack skill, but because they lack calibration. Your instincts are sharp, your judgment is better than ever, but your hands and feet need time to synchronize with technology that simply didn't exist back then. So here's the best advice you can give yourself: start smoother, not faster. Spend your first week making friends with the throttle. Practice slow speed clutch control until it feels natural again. Try every ride mode your bike offers. And stay in road or rain mode for your first couple hundred miles. Accept that the bike is more capable than you. And that's a good thing. Ego ruins returning riders. Smoothness saves them. Modern motorcycles aren't better than the ones you grew up with. They're just different, sharper, quicker, and more demanding of intentional inputs. Once you recalibrate, though, you'll realize something amazing. You're riding the bike you always wished your old bike could be. Number 3, slow speed riding is where you'll struggle the most. And that's normal. Every returning rider expects the highway to feel scary, or the corners to feel intimidating, or the power to feel overwhelming. But none of that is what actually gets them. The thing that catches almost everyone off guard is the simplest, slowest maneuver in motorcycling: the dreaded U-turn. There is nothing quite as humbling as being 50 years old, standing over a 400-pound machine you used to ride like a superhero, and suddenly feeling like you're balancing a refrigerator on a tightrope. But here's the truth: slow speed riding is the first thing your brain loses and the last thing it remembers. It is the riding skill most dependent on real time coordination, balance, muscle memory, and relaxed body movement. And those are exactly the skills that fade when you've been off a bike for years. The problem isn't that your balance disappeared. The problem is that your neural pathways for balance have gone dormant. Balance is a skill, not a memory. Your brain needs regular updates, like software, or it stops running the program efficiently. And the older you get, the more deliberate those updates need to be. That's why parking lot drills aren't just recommended for returning riders, they're mandatory. Start with wide circles, then progress to tighter circles, then practice slow crawls, then stop and go drills, then figure eights. Not fast, not fancy, not show-offy, just controlled, consistent practice. Now, here's the part people don't talk about. When you hit 45, 50, 60, your vestibular system, the part of your inner ear responsible for balance, becomes slower to adapt, not weaker, just slower. It needs repetition, it needs patience, it needs predictable movements. That's exactly why parking lot drills are magic for returning riders. They rebuild your internal gyroscope. And once that gyroscope comes back online, everything improves. You stop putting a foot down too early. You stop feeling nervous at intersections. You stop wobbling during U-turns. Your shoulders relax. Your hands loosen up. Your breathing smooths out. Your confidence rises like a tide. Every returning rider I've trained or spoken with has said the same thing. I didn't realize how rusty my low-speed skills were until I practiced them. Good, that's awareness. Awareness turns into practice. Practice turns into confidence. Confidence turns into control. And control? That's the difference between riding and merely hanging on for the ride. Number 4, your fear is not a weakness. It's your survival instinct coming back online. Every returning rider goes through this same emotional struggle. They expect to hop back on a motorcycle and feel the same thrill, the same swagger, the same recklessness they had at 25. But instead, they feel cautious, nervous, sometimes even a little afraid. And that scares them more than the bike does. But here's the truth that nobody says out loud: fear is not weakness. Fear is wisdom wearing a safety vest. When you were younger, you didn't fear consequences because you didn't understand them. You didn't have bills, you didn't have kids, you didn't have a partner depending on you, and you definitely didn't have a spine that occasionally made creak noises. Now, your life is full. Your responsibility is real, and your brain knows it. It's not trying to stop you from riding. It's trying to keep you alive while you ride. Fear is simply your brain doing an honest risk assessment, something you never did in your 20s. Fear tells you, slow down until you're comfortable. Fear tells you, practice this before trying it in traffic. Fear tells you, hey, maybe let's not test the traction of these tires while turning on gravel. Fear is the voice of maturity. Panic is the enemy. Panic is what gets riders hurt. Panic is what makes people grab a fistful of front brake or target fixate on the thing they're trying to avoid. Fear is controlled. Fear can be understood. Fear can be trained into something useful. And the more you ride, the more that fear transforms. First, it becomes awareness, a sense of what could happen. Then it becomes respect. You understand the risks and plan around them. Finally, it becomes control, the confidence to ride smoothly, skillfully, and intentionally. You're not scared because you're older. You're scared because you're smarter. And that's exactly why returning riders, once they get past that initial mental barrier, often become better riders than they were at 25, because they ride with purpose. Fear isn't the thing holding you back. It's the thing protecting you until your skills return. And once they do, fear steps aside and lets confidence take the wheel. Number 5, everyone will tell you to be careful, but nobody will tell you how. The moment you tell people you're riding again at 50, it feels like the entire universe suddenly becomes your mother. Neighbors, coworkers, your barber, the guy delivering your water jars, everyone suddenly turns into a licensed motorcycle safety instructor. Be careful. Don't do anything stupid. You're too old for that thing. My cousin's friend's uncle crashed once. Better watch out. It's wild. Most of these people have never even sat on a motorcycle, yet they're giving safety advice like they're the ghost of Valentino Rossi. Here's the problem. None of it is actionable. It's like telling someone to drive safe. Great. But how? What does that actually mean? So here's what I wish someone had told me when I came back to riding after decades away. Actual, practical advice. Not superstition, not fear-mongering, not vague warnings. 1. Take a refresher course. And no, it's not embarrassing. In fact, it's the smartest thing you can do. A good class does more than teach you to ride. It cleans up bad habits, recalibrates your reactions, and rebuilds confidence in a controlled environment. You'll learn more in one weekend than in 3 months of solo riding. 2. Ride only in daylight for the first few weeks. Not forever, just until your low-speed control, braking reflexes, and hazard perception sharpen again. Night riding triples the mental load. Give your brain a warm-up period. 3. Avoid group rides until you're truly comfortable. Group rides are fun, sure, but they're also chaotic. Different skill levels, peer pressure, unpredictable pacing. They can overwhelm returning riders fast. Ride solo for a while. Rediscover your rhythm. 4. Practice emergency braking every single session. Front brake drills, rear brake drills, combined drills. Learn your stopping distance at 20, 30, 40 miles per hour. Feel the ABS kick in. Build trust with your brakes. That trust can literally save your life. 5. Ride your own pace and own it. The worst mistake you can make is trying to keep up with someone else. Ride slower than you want. Ride slower than your ego is comfortable with. Ride at the pace where you feel calm and in control. Your speed will rise naturally as your confidence returns. 6. Choose riding conditions intentionally. Avoid peak traffic, narrow village roads, bad weather, surprise construction areas, and festival time chaos, at least in your first few weeks back. Make riding as predictable as possible while you get your coordination back online. 7. Upgrade your gear, even if you think you don't need to. Gear has evolved just as much as motorcycles. Modern armor is lighter, stronger, and way more comfortable. Riding with old gear is like using a 20-year-old helmet. Possible, but not smart. The point is this: people telling you be careful aren't wrong. They just don't know what careful means on a motorcycle. This is what careful actually looks like. And it's not fear-driven. It's strategy-driven. This is how you build longevity. This is how you ride for decades instead of just years. This is how you return to riding the right way. Number 6. Your confidence comes back, but only after your humility does. Let's get real for a second. When returning riders crash, and I mean this with love, it's almost never because the bike was too powerful, or because traffic was too chaotic, or because the universe was unfair. It's usually because the rider tried to pick up exactly where they left off decades ago. Your memory of your skill is not the same thing as your current skill. And that gap between memory and reality is where returning riders get hurt. Humility isn't about riding scared. Humility is about riding honest. It's about saying, okay, I used to be good at this, but that was 20 years ago. Let me rebuild this properly. Humility is the bridge between who you were and who you are becoming again. Here's what humility looks like in practice. 1. You slow down, not because you're scared, but because you're paying attention. You take corners at a pace where you feel fully in control. You don't rush U-turns. You don't chase speed. You let smoothness come first. Confidence grows out of smoothness. Smoothness grows out of humility. 2. You accept feedback from the bike, from instructors, from your own instincts. Your bike will tell you everything you need to know when you're stiff, when you're overshooting corners, when you're chopping the throttle, when your eyes aren't up. Humility lets you listen instead of defend. 3. You don't pretend that rust isn't real. You acknowledge that slow speed riding feels weird at first. You accept that balancing at walking pace takes practice. You let yourself be a beginner again. And there is so much power in that. Beginners learn faster than experts because they're not ashamed of learning. 4. You practice with intention, not ego. Anyone can go fast in a straight line. Real riders make a parking lot look like a dance floor. Figure eights, emergency braking, walking pace crawls, tight circles, throttle finesse. Those drills don't just teach skill, they teach humility. You learn to respect the bike, not dominate it. 5. You rebuild confidence in layers, not leaps. Your first layer is familiarity, then comfort, then control, then smoothness, then assertiveness, and finally, confidence. Confidence built through humility is solid. It doesn't crumble under pressure. It doesn't panic on gravel. It doesn't freeze in traffic. It's not loud confidence. It's quiet confidence, the kind that says, I know what I'm doing because I actually practiced it. And here's the beautiful part. Once humility opens the door, confidence walks right in, stronger, steadier, and far more reliable than the bravado you had at 25. You don't get your old riding self back. You become a better version of them. Number 7. And finally, you'll fall in love with riding in a way you never did the first time. This is the part that hits returning riders the hardest, in the best way possible. When you come back to motorcycles at 50, you don't fall in love with speed. You don't fall in love with the adrenaline. You don't fall in love with the image. You fall in love with freedom, the freedom you forgot you needed. When you were young, riding was about excitement. It was loud, it was chaotic, it was rebellious. But now riding is quiet in the soul. It's the moment your brain stops juggling responsibilities. It's the moment your phone stops screaming for attention. It's the moment your body settles into a rhythm, engine, wind, heartbeat. You don't ride to escape anymore. You ride to return to yourself. And somehow, the bike knows. It doesn't demand anything from you the way life does. It doesn't interrupt you. It doesn't judge you. It simply carries you through air, through space, through thought. Returning to riding at 50 reconnects you with a version of yourself you thought you'd lost. Not the wild version, not the reckless version, the curious version, the hopeful version, the version that feels alive. Here's the best part. You stop caring what anyone else thinks. You don't ride to impress people at stoplights. You don't ride to show off at meetups. You don't ride to compete with younger riders. You ride because the world feels wider on two wheels, because sunsets look better in your mirrors, because country roads feel like therapy, because a 20-minute ride fixes problems that 20 hours of thinking couldn't. You ride because it brings your joy back, real joy, the kind you can't force or fake. You start appreciating the details you never noticed before, the calm hum of the engine at 45 kilometers per hour, the way a perfectly executed turn feels like exhaling, the way your helmet makes the world sound like a movie, the way your shadow stretches beside you on late afternoon rides. The way strangers nod at you like you're part of a secret club, because you are. At 50, you don't fall in love with riding again. You fall in love with living again. Riding is just how you get there. This chapter of riding isn't about proving anything. It's about enjoying everything. And once that realization hits you, once that calm confidence replaces the fire you used to chase, you understand something profound. You weren't too old to come back. You were finally old enough to appreciate it. So if you're thinking about returning to riding, or if you just came back, welcome. You're in the best chapter of your riding life right now. This is Matthew from Autozium. Ride safe, ride smart, and ride for you, not for who you used to be. I'll see you in the next one.